I received a VIP invitation to visit a luxury nursing home. My stepson's wife had already made the reservation. "Time to get rid of this burden," she said to the nurse. "I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from, so I can see how far my story has reached." I stood there frozen, my hand clutching my purse so tightly my knuckles turned white. Victoria didn't see me standing just around the corner from the reception desk. She thought I was still in the garden with the tour guide, admiring the koi pond that was supposed to make this place feel like a resort, rather than what it really was. A beautifully disguised final destination. "Mrs. Cooper, I understand your concerns," the administrator replied in a hushed tone. "But we need to be clear that your mother-in-law must sign the admission paperwork herself, unless you have power of attorney." Victoria laughed, a sound I'd heard countless times at family dinners, but never with this edge to it. "Don't worry about Pamela. She's becoming more forgetful by the day. My husband and I can handle her. We just need to get her used to the idea that this is best for everyone." "And the financial arrangements?" the administrator asked. "Already taken care of," Victoria replied confidently. "Once we sell her house, there will be more than enough to cover the fees for years. Plus, we'll finally be able to send the twins to that private school we've been looking at. My house, the home Harold and I had built together over 40 years of marriage, the place where I'd raised Michael after his mother abandoned him when he was just 7 years old. The garden I tended every spring, the kitchen where I taught Michael to make his father's favorite cookies, the porch where Harold and I sat every evening until his heart gave out last year." "Mrs. Reynolds?" The tour guide's voice startled me. "Are you all right? You look pale." I forced a smile. Years of hosting dinner parties for Harold's business associates having trained me well in the art of hiding my true feelings. "Just a bit tired, dear. This is quite a large facility." "Would you like to sit down? We have a lovely common area just ahead where residents enjoy their afternoon tea." "Residents, not patients, not inmates. Residents. Such a civilized word for people being stored away." "Actually," I said, "I think I've seen enough for today. My stepson will be picking me up soon." The guide looked at her watch. "But we've only toured half the facility. Mr. Cooper specifically requested a complete tour." I bet he did. I wondered what else Michael and Victoria had specifically requested behind my back. "Perhaps another day," I said firmly. As we walked back toward the entrance, I made sure to take a different route to avoid Victoria. I needed time to think, to process what I'd just heard. Time to understand that the family I'd given everything to now saw me as nothing more than a burden to be discarded and a house to be sold. Michael was waiting in the parking lot, leaning against his luxury SUV, scrolling through his phone. He looked up and smiled when he saw me, a smile I'd once believed was genuine. How many other things had I been wrong about? "How was the tour, Pam? Impressive place, isn't it?" he asked as he opened the passenger door for me. "Very impressive," I replied, sliding into the seat. "You and Victoria have obviously put a lot of thought into this." If he caught the edge in my voice, he didn't show it. "Well, we just want what's best for you. Since Dad passed, we've been worried about you alone in that big house." I looked out the window as we pulled away from Oak Ridge Senior Living. The ornate sign promised, "Luxury living for your golden years." Golden years. What a pretty phrase for being pushed aside when you're no longer useful. "Where's Victoria?" I asked casually. "I thought she was supposed to join us for the tour." "Oh, she had to meet with someone about a charity event. You know how busy she is." Another lie to add to the pile. As Michael drove us home, my home, the one they were already counting on selling, I made a decision. They thought I was a fragile old woman, easily manipulated, easily discarded. They had no idea what I was capable of. At 65, I was far from helpless, and I was about to show them exactly how wrong they were. I spent the night after the nursing home visit staring at my bedroom ceiling, the same ceiling Harold and I had painted together when we first bought this house. Sleep wouldn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Victoria's words. Time to get rid of this burden. When morning arrived, I went through my routine with mechanical precision. Shower, coffee, toast I couldn't taste. As I sat at my kitchen table, the silence of the house wrapped around me like a shroud. For the first time since Harold died, the silence felt threatening rather than comforting. My phone chimed with a text from Michael. "Mom, Victoria and I thought we'd stop by tonight. Bringing dinner from that Italian place you love." Since when? In the 11 months since Harold's funeral, they'd visited exactly 4 times, and never once had they brought food. Now they were stopping by with my favorite Italian? The sudden attentiveness made my stomach churn. I spent the day watching the house with new eyes, seeing it as Victoria did. Not as a home filled with memories, but as an asset to be liquidated. The grandfather clock in the hallway that Harold had restored. The dining room set where we'd hosted 30 Thanksgiving dinners. The garden that had been my sanctuary. All of it reduced to dollar signs in their eyes. At precisely 6 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I took a deep breath and opened the door to find Michael and Victoria standing there, their smiles bright and artificial. Victoria held a bag from Salvatore's, the restaurant Harold and I had gone to on our anniversary every year. Something Michael would have known if he'd been paying attention. "Pamela, you look wonderful," Victoria exclaimed, air-kissing both my cheeks. She'd never done that before. "That blouse brings out your eyes." Michael set the food on the dining room table while Victoria fluttered around my kitchen, opening cabinets, like she owned the place, retrieving plates and glasses. "So?" Michael said as we settled in to eat. "What did you think of Oak Ridge? Pretty amazing amenities, right?" I twirled pasta around my fork, watching them. It was illuminating. "The gardens are spectacular," Victoria chimed in. "I know how much you love gardening, and they have those community planting beds where residents can grow their own flowers. Small consolation for leaving my own garden behind, I suppose," I said quietly. Victoria and Michael exchanged a quick glance. "Well," Michael said carefully, "that's actually something we wanted to talk about. Victoria and I have been thinking." "Have you now?" I interrupted, setting down my fork. Michael cleared his throat. "Mom, we're worried about you in this big house alone. The stairs, the maintenance, the yard work. It's a lot for anyone to handle, especially someone my age?" I finished for him. "That's not what I meant," he backtracked. "But since Dad died, we've noticed you seem, well, a bit overwhelmed." Victoria nodded sympathetically. "Just last week you forgot about our lunch date. Remember? There had been no lunch date." I knew it, and from the calculated look in Victoria's eyes, she knew I knew it too. "And the gardener mentioned you've been forgetting to water the east flower beds," Michael added. "We didn't have a gardener. I tended the garden myself, every day, just as I had for 4 decades. "Is that so?" I said, my voice steady despite the yaw. Rage building inside me. "We just think Oak Ridge would give you the support you need while still maintaining your independence," Victoria said, reaching across the table to pat my hand condescendingly. "Plus, think of the social aspects. So many. People your own age to connect with." As they spoke, I noticed Victoria's eyes darting around the room, mentally cataloging. Her gaze lingered on Harold's vintage record collection, my grandmother's silver tea service, the painting above the fireplace that Harold and I had bought on our trip to Provence. "We could help you sort through everything," she offered with practiced casualness. "Decide what to take with you to Oak Ridge. The place isn't huge, but they have such lovely built-ins for personal items." "And what about everything that doesn't fit?" I asked. Michael shifted uncomfortably. Well, we could store some things, sell what you don't need or want, Victoria interjected, and use the proceeds to offset the costs of Oak Ridge, Michael finished. I see, I said quietly. And the house itself? Another glance between them. Michael looked down at his plate. We thought, well, the market is really strong right now. It would make sense to sell while prices are high. For my benefit. Of course, I said. Exactly, Victoria exclaimed, not catching my sarcasm, or choosing to ignore it. The proceeds would ensure you have the best care possible at Oak Ridge for years to come. After dinner, Victoria insisted on helping me clear the dishes, an unprecedented event. While Michael conveniently took a work call in the living room, she cornered me at the sink. Pamela, she said in a hushed voice, I've noticed you've seemed a bit confused lately. Have you mentioned that to your doctor? I met her gaze steadily. I'm not confused, Victoria. In fact, I'm seeing things more clearly than I have in a long time. She blinked, momentarily thrown off script, then recovered with a practiced smile. Well, that's good to hear. We just want what's best for you. As they prepared to leave, Victoria pulled an envelope from her purse. We picked up some information from Oak Ridge for you to look through. They have an opening next month that we've tentatively reserved. No pressure, of course. I took the envelope, feeling its weight in my hands. The weight of their betrayal. Thank you both for dinner, I said at the door. It's given me a lot to think about. After they left, I sat in Harold's old armchair, the Oak Ridge brochure open on my lap. On its glossy cover, smiling seniors played croquet on manicured lawns. Inside, details about memory care and assisted living options were outlined alongside astronomical monthly fees. I closed the brochure and tossed it aside. They thought they had it all figured out. They thought I was just a feeble old woman who would sign away her home and her freedom without a fight. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. Over the next 2 weeks, Michael and Victoria's visits became disturbingly frequent. They arrived unannounced, bearing gifts and fake smiles. Each visit felt like another brick in the wall they were building around me. Mom, I noticed your medication organizer wasn't filled correctly, Michael said during one such visit, holding up my pill case. The Tuesday morning slot had your evening pills in it. I frowned, taking the case from him. I'd been organizing my medications without error for years, even helping Harold with his complex regimen before he passed. That's strange. I'm certain I filled it correctly. Victoria exchanged a meaningful look with Michael. It's nothing to worry about, Pamela. Everyone makes mistakes, but it is concerning when it comes to medication. Later, after they left, I checked my pill case carefully. The pills had indeed been switched around, but I hadn't been the one to switch them. The incidents escalated. I came downstairs one morning to find the stove burner on low, the pot empty and scorched. Thank goodness I stopped by early, Victoria said, turning off the burner with a dramatic flourish. Pamela, you could have started a fire. I didn't turn this on, I insisted. I haven't even had breakfast yet. Oh, Pamela, she sighed, her voice dripping with false concern. You must have forgotten. It's okay. It happens to the best of us. That evening, when I mentioned the incident to my neighbor Grace during our weekly phone call, she sounded worried. Pam, are you sure you didn't leave the stove on? That could be dangerous. The seed of doubt had been planted. If Victoria could convince others that I was becoming forgetful and unsafe, how long before everyone believed it? The following week, my checkbook disappeared from my desk drawer. I tore the house apart looking for it, only to have Michael find it in the freezer 3 days later during another surprise visit. Mom, why would you put your checkbook in the freezer? He asked, his voice gentle but his eyes calculating. I didn't, I said firmly. Then how did it get there? Victoria asked, her eyebrows raised in exaggerated concern. Each incident was carefully crafted to make me appear increasingly incapable. My house keys went missing only to be discovered in the flour canister. Important mail disappeared. My doctor's appointment was mysteriously canceled because someone had called to reschedule it, though it wasn't me. One afternoon, I returned from grocery shopping to find Victoria in my bedroom, opening drawers. "Oh," she startled, quickly closing the drawer. "I was just looking for a sweater for you. It's getting chilly outside." But I had seen what was in that drawer, my jewelry box, where I kept the diamond earrings Harold had given me on our 40th anniversary, along with other precious pieces. That night, I did a full inventory. Everything was there, but the violation of my privacy left me shaking with anger and fear. They were methodically building a case against me, creating a paper trail of incidents to justify pushing me into Oak Ridge. The final straw came when Dr. Matthews, my physician for over 15 years, called me directly. "Pamela, your son contacted me with some concerns about your memory and safety at home. He's requested a cognitive assessment." My blood ran cold. Michael is my stepson, not my son. And I can assure you, doctor, my cognitive functions are just fine. There was a pause on the line. Be that as it may, given the concerns raised, I think it would be prudent to run some tests, just to be thorough. After hanging up, I sat on the edge of my bed, heart pounding. They were moving faster than I'd anticipated, already involving medical professionals. Soon, they might try for legal control, power of attorney, conservatorship. The walls were closing in. I tried calling my old friend Sarah, but her daughter answered. "Mom's not feeling well today, Mrs. Reynolds. She mentioned you've been having some difficulties lately. Is everything okay?" Michael's been keeping us updated. Updated? My stepson was spreading his narrative to my friends? I hung up without responding. That evening, as dusk settled over my garden, I sat on the porch swing Harold had built, feeling more alone than I had even in the dark days after his funeral. The manipulation was working. People were beginning to look at me differently, question my competence. For a fleeting moment, I wondered if I was indeed losing my grip on reality. Was it possible I was forgetting things? Had I put my checkbook in the freezer during some momentary lapse? No. I shook the doubt away. This was gaslighting, pure and simple. Victoria and Michael were systematically undermining my credibility, isolating me from my support network. As night fell, I made two decisions. First, I would install small security cameras in my main living areas. Nothing intrusive, just enough to document what really happened when I wasn't looking. And second, I would return to Oak Ridge Senior Living, not as a future resident, but as someone seeking answers. They thought I was a helpless old woman, easily manipulated into surrendering her life. But they had underestimated me. Grieving. Yes, vulnerable perhaps, but helpless? Not even close. The next morning, I returned to Oak Ridge Senior Living. This time, I didn't call Michael for a ride. I took a taxi, determined to maintain control of when I arrived and left. The receptionist greeted me with a practiced smile. "Mrs. Reynolds? Back so soon? Did you forget something during your tour?" "Not exactly," I replied. "I was hoping to speak with the administrator I met last time, Ms. Clark, I believe." "I'm afraid she's in meetings all morning. Would you like to schedule an appointment?" "That's all right. I'll wait in the garden." I didn't want to leave my name or number, not when Michael and Victoria might be monitoring my movements. The garden was peaceful, with carefully maintained flower beds and stone pathways. I found a bench beneath a maple tree and settled in, to wait, watching residents being escorted around by staff members or family visitors. Some seemed content, engaged in conversation. Others appeared vacant, their eyes fixed on nothing in particular. "It's not as bad as it looks," a voice said beside me. I turned to find a young woman in nursing scrubs sitting down on the bench. It took me a moment to place her. The nurse who had been at the reception desk when Victoria made her revealing comment. "Excuse me?" "I said it's not as bad as it looks," she repeated, her voice low. "Some of these folks are actually happy here. The ones who chose to come, that is." My heart skipped a beat. "And the ones who didn't choose?" She met my eyes directly. "Those are the ones I worry about." She extended her hand. "I'm Eliza, by the way." "Pamela Reynolds," I replied, shaking her hand. "I know who you are, Mrs. Reynolds." Eliza's eyes darted around quickly. "Your daughter-in-law has been quite persistent about securing your placement here." My throat tightened. "Victoria isn't my daughter-in-law. She's married to my stepson." "Interesting." She referred to herself as your daughter-in-law, made a big show of how concerned the family is about you. Eliza's voice held a note of skepticism. "Said you've been showing signs of cognitive decline." Did she now? I felt a surge of anger, quickly followed by fear. How much groundwork had they already laid? Eliza hesitated, then leaned closer. "Mrs. Reynolds, I don't mean to overstep, but is this placement something you want?" "No," I answered firmly. "It is not." She nodded, seeming relieved. I didn't think so. Not after what I overheard her say about getting rid of a burden. I stared at her, surprised by her frankness. "Why are you telling me this?" Eliza looked down at her hands. "My grandmother went through something similar. Her children decided she was too much work, too expensive to care for at home. They moved her into a place like this against her will. Within 6 months, she'd given up. Just faded away." She looked up at me, her eyes fierce. I couldn't help her then. Maybe I can help you now. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope. "How?" "First, you need to know you're not alone. And second, you need to speak with James Foster." She pulled a business card from her pocket and pressed it into my hand. "He's an attorney who specializes in elder rights. He helped my neighbor when her son tried to force her into a home to get control of her property." I glanced at the card. Elder Rights Law Group. "I don't know if I can afford—" "Initial consultation is free," Eliza cut in. "Just tell him what's happening. He'll advise you on your options." "Why would you risk your job to help me?" I asked. Eliza stood up, straightening her scrubs. "Because what they're doing is wrong. And because I've seen too many people pushed into care they don't need or want just because they're older." She glanced at her watch. "I need to get back to my station." "But Mrs. Reynolds?" "Yes?" "Document everything. Keep a journal of every incident, every conversation. Note dates, times, who was present. If they're trying to establish that you're incompetent, you need to establish that you're not." After Eliza left, I sat in the garden a while longer, clutching the attorney's card like a lifeline. For the first time since overhearing Victoria's cruel words, I felt something other than fear and helplessness. I felt the stirrings of a plan. Back home. I called James Foster's office from my landline, not trusting my cell phone, which Michael had insisted on adding to his family plan last year. To save money, he'd claimed. The receptionist scheduled an appointment for the following day. That evening, the security cameras I'd ordered arrived. They were small, inconspicuous devices that connected to my home's Wi-Fi network. I spent hours setting them up, placing them strategically in my living room, kitchen, and hallway, areas where the suspicious incidents had occurred. The cameras would upload footage directly to a secure cloud account only I could access. Just as I finished hiding the last camera, my doorbell rang. Michael stood on the porch, holding a paper bag. "Hey, Mom," he said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Brought you some of those muffins you like, I forced a smile. That's thoughtful of you. He placed the bag on the counter and wandered into the living room, eyes scanning everything. Just wanted to check in. Victoria and I were talking, and we think it might be good to have someone come stay with you for a while, just until we figure out a more permanent arrangement. Someone? I echoed, following him. A caregiver. Just part-time at first. He picked up a framed photo of Harold and me on our wedding day, studying it before setting it down slightly out of place. We found a service that specializes in transition care. Transition care. The euphemism made my skin crawl. That won't be necessary, I said firmly. I'm managing just fine on my own. Michael sighed, the sound heavy with rehearsed patience. Mom, we've talked about this. The stove incident, your medication mix-ups. These aren't signs of managing fine. Those things didn't happen the way you and Victoria claimed, I replied, my voice steady despite my racing heart. He looked at me with practiced concern. See, this denial is exactly what worries us. Look, we've already scheduled an assessment for next week. The care service will send someone to evaluate your needs. Without my consent. Without even consulting me. The audacity took my breath away. Michael, I said carefully, I appreciate your concern, but I won't be needing an assessment or a caregiver. His expression hardened slightly. Mom, be reasonable. We're trying to help you. As he left, promising to call tomorrow, I stood in my doorway watching him drive away. Once I had rocked this man to sleep, bandaged his skinned knees, celebrated his achievements. Now he was a stranger to me, plotting to remove me from my home for his own benefit. But thanks to Eliza, I was no longer facing this battle alone. Tomorrow, I would meet with James Foster. And tonight, my new security cameras would ensure that if Victoria or Michael attempted any more incidents, I would have proof. For the first time in weeks, I slept soundly. The business card from the E's Elder Rights Law Group on my nightstand like a protective talisman. James Foster's office was nothing like I'd imagined. Instead of the intimidating, sterile environment I'd expected, his space was warm and inviting, more like a living room than a law office. Bookshelves lined the walls, family photos sat on his desk, and a comfortable couch replaced the usual, stiff visitor chairs. Mrs. Reynolds, he greeted me, extending his hand. Please, have a seat. James was in his 60s, with silver hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. As I settled onto the couch, he sat across from me in an armchair, notepad in hand. Eliza mentioned your situation, he said, but I'd like to hear it from you, if that's all right. For the next hour, I poured out everything. The overheard conversation at Oak Ridge, the escalating incidents, the doctor's call, the scheduled caregiver assessment. James listened intently, occasionally asking questions but never interrupting the flow of my story. When I finished, he set his notepad aside and leaned forward. Mrs. Reynolds, what you're describing is unfortunately not uncommon. I've handled dozens of cases where adult children try to establish a pattern of incompetence to gain control of a parent's assets. Can they do that? I asked, my voice smaller than I intended. Legally force me into a home? Not without due process, he assured me. But they can make your life difficult enough that you might eventually agree just to end the harassment. That's their real strategy. Wear you down until you surrender voluntarily. I won't surrender, I said firmly. James smiled. Good, because you don't have to. Based on what you've told me, you're fully competent to make your own decisions, and the law is on your side. He outlined a strategy, not a confrontational one, but a quiet, methodical approach that would protect me while gathering evidence of Michael and Victoria's manipulation. First, we need to secure your assets, he explained. If your house and accounts are solely in your name, We should take steps to ensure they stay that way. We discussed a revocable trust that would protect my assets while giving me complete control during my lifetime. James also suggested updating my will to include specific language about my wishes regarding assisted living. Next, we need medical documentation of your cognitive health, he continued. I'll refer you to a geriatric specialist who works with our firm, someone with no connection to your family doctor. An independent assessment will establish baseline evidence of your competence. As James spoke, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. There were concrete steps I could take, legal protections I could put in place. What about the security cameras? I asked. Is it legal for me to record in my own home? In this state, yes, as long as they're in common areas like your kitchen and living room, not bathrooms or guest bedrooms. The footage could be invaluable if we need to prove tampering or gaslighting. By the time I left James's office, I had a comprehensive plan and something even more valuable: hope. I wouldn't confront Michael and Victoria directly, not yet. Instead, I would quietly build my defenses while documenting their attempts to undermine me. That afternoon, I visited the bank where Harold and I had done business for decades. Martha, the manager who had attended Harold's funeral, greeted me warmly. Pamela, it's good to see you. How have you been holding up? Managing? I replied with a small smile. Martha, I need to make some changes to my accounts. I established new accounts at a different bank, transferring a portion of my funds, not everything, as that might alert Michael, but enough to ensure my immediate financial security. At James's suggestion, I also set up automatic payments for my mortgage, utilities, and other essential bills so that no one could claim I was neglecting my financial responsibilities. Next, I visited Dr. Eleanor Winters, the geriatric specialist James had recommended. Her assessment was thorough: cognitive tests, memory evaluations, even a physical exam to check my overall health. Mrs. Reynolds, she said when we'd finished, I see no evidence of cognitive impairment. Your memory functions are excellent for a woman of any age, and your problem-solving skills are well above average. She provided a detailed written report documenting my mental competence, a report that would be stored safely with James Foster, not in my home where it might mysteriously disappear. Back at home, I received my first alert from the security cameras. Michael had let himself in using the emergency key I kept in the garage lockbox, a key I'd never authorized him to use for casual visits. I watched in real time as he moved through my house, opening drawers, checking medicine cabinets, even flipping through my checkbook. Then he did something that made my blood run cold. He took 2 pills from my evening medication and replaced them with different ones from a small container in his pocket. My hands shook as I called James. I have it on video, I told him. He's tampering with my medication. Save that footage, James instructed, and don't take those pills. We'll have them analyzed. 2 days later, the lab results confirmed what I already suspected. The substituted pills were a mild sedative, not prescribed to me. Not enough to cause serious harm, but enough to make me seem confused and disoriented. As James and I built our case, I maintained a facade of normalcy with Michael and Victoria. I accepted their visits, pretended not to notice their scrutiny, even allowed the caregiver assessment they'd scheduled, though I politely declined the help afterward, citing the assessor's finding that I was managing well independently, a finding that clearly frustrated Victoria. They'll escalate, James warned me. They've invested too much in this plan to give up easily. He was right. 3 weeks after my initial visit to his office, Michael and Victoria arrived unannounced, on a Sunday afternoon, accompanied by Dr. Matthews. Mom, Michael said gently, we're worried about you. We've all agreed it's time to talk about next steps. I offered them tea, my hands steady despite the hammering of my heart. The pieces of my silent strategy were in place. Now I just needed to stay calm and follow the plan James and I had carefully constructed. Victoria smiled at me sympathetically as she accepted the teacup. Pamela, we only want what's best for you. If only she knew what I had in store for them. My living room had never felt so crowded. Michael and Victoria sat side by side on the sofa, their postures stiff with rehearsed concern. Dr. Matthews occupied Harold's armchair, his medical bag conspicuously placed beside him. The tension was suffocating. Pamela, Dr. Matthews began, using my first name though he never had before. Your family has noticed some concerning changes in your behavior recently. I raised an eyebrow. Have they? Memory lapses, confusion, unsafe behaviors like leaving the stove on, Victoria interjected, counting off on her manicured fingers. We're worried about you living alone. Michael leaned forward. Mom, we found a perfect solution. Oak Ridge has an opening next week. We've already made arrangements. Arrangements, I repeated, keeping my voice even. For my life, without consulting me. It's because we care, Victoria insisted, her smile not reaching her eyes. Dr. Matthews agrees it's for the best. Don't you, Doctor? Dr. Matthews cleared his throat. Based on what Michael has reported, I do have concerns about safety. I've brought some papers. Before we discuss papers, I interrupted gently. I think we should clear the air. I set my teacup down carefully. Michael, Victoria, would you like to tell me why you've been tampering with my medication and creating false incidents to make me appear incompetent? The room went silent. Victoria's smile froze on her face. What are you talking about? Michael asked, his voice tight. I reached for the remote control on the side table and turned on the television. I think a demonstration might be helpful. The screen flickered to life, showing footage from my security cameras. There was Michael, clearly switching my pills. Another clip showed Victoria turning on the stove burner before calling me downstairs. A third captured Michael placing my checkbook in the freezer while I was out gardening. Dr. Matthews's face paled as he watched. What is this? Evidence, I replied calmly. I've been aware of their manipulation for some time now. The doorbell rang, and I rose to answer it. James Foster stood on my porch alongside Eliza from Oak Ridge and Dr. Winters, the geriatric specialist who had assessed me. Perfect timing, I said, inviting them in. We were just discussing my mental competence. Michael stood up abruptly. Mom, what is this? Who are these people? James stepped forward. I'm James Foster, Mrs. Reynolds' attorney. And you must be Michael, the stepson who's been drugging your stepmother to gain control of her assets. Victoria's face contorted with anger. That's absurd. We've been taking care of her. Is that what you call it? Eliza asked coldly. I've been documenting your visits to Oak Ridge, Mrs. Cooper, including your charming comment about getting rid of this burden. Dr. Matthews looked between us all, confusion evident on his face. I don't understand. Michael told me Mrs. Reynolds was experiencing serious cognitive decline. Dr. Winters stepped forward, offering him her professional card. I conducted a thorough assessment of Mrs. Reynolds just last week. She exhibits no signs of cognitive impairment whatsoever. In fact, her mental acuity is exceptional. The pills, I said quietly. The ones Michael substituted for my regular medication. We had them analyzed. Would you like to see the results, Dr. Matthews? Michael's face had gone ashen. Mom, you're confused. We were trying to help. Stop. My voice was soft but firm. No more lies, Michael. I've documented everything. The pill switching, the staged incidents, Victoria's conversation at Oak Ridge about selling my house to pay for the twins' private school. Victoria gasped. You heard that? I did, and so did Eliza. I turned to Dr. Matthews. They've been systematically attempting to create a false impression of mental decline so they could control my assets. Specifically, this house and my savings. These Are serious allegations, Dr. Matthews said slowly, closing his medical bag. With substantial evidence to support them, James added. Evidence we're prepared to present to the police if necessary. Victoria jumped to her feet. This is ridiculous. We were concerned about her well-being. Is that why you replaced her heart medication with sedatives? Eliza asked sharply. Because you were concerned? Michael's eyes darted to the door as if calculating an escape route. Mom, you can't believe we would— I have it on video, Michael, I said, my heart breaking despite my resolve. I watched you switch my pills with my own eyes. The room fell silent except for Victoria's rapid breathing. Dr. Matthews looked at Michael with new eyes, not as a concerned son, but as someone who had manipulated him for their own gain. I think, Dr. Matthews said carefully, that I need to reevaluate the situation. Mrs. Reynolds, I apologize for my role in this. I should have spoken with you directly rather than relying on secondhand reports. I nodded my acceptance of his apology. Then I turned to Michael and Victoria. I won't be moving to Oak Ridge, I said evenly. Now or in the foreseeable future, I won't be selling this house. And most importantly, I won't be allowing either of you to make decisions about my life again. What are you saying? Michael asked, his voice hollow. I'm saying that you are no longer welcome in my home. Both of you have betrayed my trust in the most fundamental way, Victoria scoffed. You can't just cut us off. We're family. Family doesn't drug family, I replied. Family doesn't create elaborate schemes to institutionalize family for financial gain. James handed Michael a thick envelope. This is a cease and desist order, legally barring both of you from entering Mrs. Reynolds' property without explicit written permission. It also warns against any further attempts to interfere with her medical care or financial affairs. We've also filed a report with the police regarding the medication tampering, Dr. Winters added. They may be contacting you. Michael's shoulders slumped in defeat. Mom, please. I think it's time for you to leave, I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the turmoil inside me. Dr. Matthews, would you like to stay? I believe we have some matters to discuss regarding my actual medical care. After Michael and Victoria departed, Victoria huffing indignantly, Michael avoiding my eyes, the tension in the room dissipated. Dr. Matthews apologized profusely, horrified that he'd been manipulated into participating in their scheme. What will you do now? Eliza asked me as our impromptu gathering wound down. I looked around the living room, at the home Harold and I had built together, at the life I'd nearly lost to greed and manipulation. Live, I answered simply. On my own terms. In the months that followed, I did exactly that. I joined a community garden, took a watercolor class at the senior center, and even began mentoring young women through a local business association, drawing on my years as a school teacher and Harold's business partner. Michael attempted reconciliation several times, each overture more desperate than the last. Perhaps one day I would find it in my heart to forgive him, though never to trust him with my well-being again. Victoria, unsurprisingly, filed for divorce once it became clear that the inheritance she'd counted on would never materialize. Eliza became a dear friend, visiting regularly on her days off. James helped me establish a foundation that provided legal assistance to seniors facing similar situations. And Dr. Winters connected me with a support group for elderly individuals who had survived exploitation attempts by family members. The irony wasn't lost on me. In trying to discard me, Michael and Victoria had inadvertently led me to a richer, more purposeful chapter of my life than I could have imagined in the dark days after Harold's death. 1 year after that fateful visit to Oak Ridge, I sat on my porch swing, watching the eye. Sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. My garden bloomed with new life, much like my spirit. The home that Victoria had so eagerly planned to sell had become my sanctuary once more, filled with new friends, new purpose, and a hard-won peace. The burden they had tried to discard had risen, stronger and wiser than before. And in that, rising, I had found my most precious inheritance, not money or property, but the quiet strength that comes from standing firm in your own truth, even when those who should love you the most try to convince you it's a lie.